The space station called Harmony's Rest floated in the dark emptiness between two arms of the galaxy. It was old and large, built by many species over many years. 12 different alien races worked there. They fixed ships. They treated the sick. They traded goods. The station was a place where travelers could stop, rest, and continue their journey. Park Do-hyun was one of the few humans on the station. He was 34 years old, with tired eyes and steady hands. Back on Earth, he had been a field medic. He had worked in war zones and disaster areas. He had saved lives in places where there were no hospitals, no fancy equipment, just his skills and his will to help. But here, on this alien station, he was nobody. Humans were new to the galaxy. They had only made contact with alien life about 100 years ago. Most species did not trust them. They thought humans were too wild, too aggressive, too strange. The Galactic Union had allowed a few humans to work on their stations, but only in small roles. Do-hyun was given the night shift in the medical bay. He treated minor cuts and small injuries. Nothing important. The alien doctors made sure of that. Do-hyun did not complain. He did his work quietly. He watched and learned. He studied the files of every alien species he could find. He wanted to understand their bodies, their weaknesses, their strengths. The other doctors ignored him, but Do-hyun did not care. He knew that one day his knowledge would matter. That day came on a cold station night. A ship arrived at the docking bay. It was a Mirathi trading vessel, and it was badly damaged. Burn marks covered its hull. Parts of it were torn open, showing the metal bones beneath. Pirates had attacked it near the disputed zones, a dangerous area of space where law meant nothing. The Mirathi were a proud species. They looked like large wolves that walked on two legs. Their fur came in many colors, from silver to black to deep brown. They had sharp claws, strong jaws, and golden eyes that seemed to see right through you. They traveled in family groups called packs, and they were fiercely loyal to their own. This pack had suffered greatly. Many of them were dead. The survivors stumbled off the ship, carrying their wounded, their faces filled with grief and anger. Among them was a female named Keleth. She was tall and strong, with silver fur marked by old scars. In her arms, she carried something small and still dawed. It was her daughter, Rena. Rena was just a cub, only 4 cycles old. She had soft silver fur like her mother and large golden eyes that were now closed. A piece of metal was stuck in her chest near her heart. She was barely breathing. The station's medical team rushed to help. The chief medical officer was a Velith named Turim. The Velith were strange beings with skin that changed color based on their emotions. Turim's skin was usually a calm blue, but now it flickered with worried yellows and oranges. He placed Rena in the scanning pod and studied her injuries. For 6 hours, Turim and his team examined the cub. They ran tests. They looked at images of her insides. They talked in low voices, their faces grim. Do-hyun watched from the back of the observation room, saying nothing. He could see the scans on the screen. He could see the problem. The piece of metal was very close to Rena's secondary heart. Mirathi had 2 hearts, and the shrapnel was pressing against the smaller one. If anyone tried to remove it, the blood vessel might break. Rena would bleed to death in minutes. Finally, Turim stepped back from the surgical pod. His skin had turned a dull gray, the color of defeat. "We cannot help her," he said. "The fragment is too close to the cardiac membrane. Any surgery will kill her. We will make her comfortable, but there is nothing more we can do." Keleth stared at him. For a moment, she did not move. Then she let out a sound that needed no translation. It was the sound of a mother losing her child. It was raw and terrible and filled with pain. "You are telling me to watch my daughter die?" Keleth growled. Turim's colors flickered. "I am sorry." This is beyond our ability. Then find someone whose ability is greater. There's no one. The damage is too severe. The Union's best surgeons could not save her. I am truly sorry. Calith turned away. She walked to where Rena lay and sat beside her. She began to sing softly in her native language, a song of mourning, a song of goodbye. The other members of her pack joined her, their voices rising and falling in the cold medical bay. Do-hyun stood at the window, watching. His hands were clenched at his sides. He had seen the scans. He had studied Mirathi anatomy. Tareem was right, the surgery was incredibly dangerous. By the standards of the Galactic Union, it was impossible, but Do-hyun had not learned medicine by galactic standards. He had learned it in the mud and blood of Earth. He had learned it in places where impossible was just another word for we have to try harder. He had learned that sometimes the only difference between life and death was one person who refused to give up. He looked at Rena, small and still on the medical bed. He looked at Calith, singing her song of grief. He thought about what would happen if he did nothing. The cub would die. The mother would lose her child. And Do-hyun would go back to treating minor cuts on the night shift, knowing he could have tried. He could not accept that not yet. Not without trying. Do-hyun turned away from the window and walked into the darkness of the station. He had work to do. Rena was moved to a recovery bay. It was a small room with soft lights and quiet machines. The doctors called it a place of rest, but everyone knew what it really was. It was a place to wait for death. The Mirathi pack gathered around their cub. They brought blankets and cushions. They sat in a circle and sang their morning songs. The music was low and sad, filled with words that spoke of loss and love and the great darkness that waited for all living things. Other patients on the station heard the songs and stayed away. Among most species, death was a private matter. No one wanted to intrude on such grief. Do-hyun worked his night shifts as usual. He treated a dock worker who had cut his hand. He gave medicine to a trader with a bad stomach. He filled out reports and cleaned equipment. But every night, on his way back to his room, he walked past the Mirathi Bay. He told himself he was just checking on the patient. It was normal for a medic to be concerned. But the truth was simpler. He could not stop thinking about Rena. Through the window, he could see her lying on the medical bed. Her silver fur had lost its shine. Her breathing was shallow and weak. The machines around her beeped softly, counting down the time she had left. Her mother Calith sat beside her, never leaving, never sleeping. The other pack members took turns bringing food and water. But Calith refused to move. On the first night, Do-hyun watched for a few minutes and then walked away. On the second night, he watched longer. On the third night, he noticed that Rena's eyes were open. She was looking at the ceiling, her golden gaze empty and tired. He wondered what she was thinking. He wondered if she was afraid. On the fourth night, everything changed. Do-hyun was walking past the bay at his usual time. The corridor was empty and quiet. Most of the station was asleep. He was thinking about the surgery, running through the steps in his mind, imagining how he might do it differently than the alien doctors. Then he heard footsteps behind him. They were soft and unsteady, like someone learning to walk. Do-hyun turned around. Rena stood in the corridor. She was so small, barely reaching his waist. Her silver fur was messy and dull. She had pulled the monitoring wires from her chest, and the loose ends hung from her hospital gown. She was trembling with the effort of standing, but her golden eyes were fixed on him with fierce determination. Do-hyun's heart stopped for a moment. He quickly looked around, but no one else was there. The bay door was open behind her. She had walked out on her own. "You should not be out of bed," he said softly. Rena took another shaky step toward him. "Bed is for dying," she said. Her voice was thin and weak, but there was strength in it. I do not want to die in bed. Do-hyun did not know what to say. He crouched down so that he was at her level. Up close, he could see how sick she was. Her fur was falling out in patches. Her eyes were too bright, burning with fever. The wound on her chest was red and swollen. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Bad," Rena admitted. "It hurts. Everything hurts." She paused, catching her breath. "But I had to find you." "Find me? Why?" Rena tilted her head, studying him. "You walk past my room every night. I see you through the window. You look at me, but you do not look like the others." "What do you mean?" "The doctors look at me and see someone who is already dead. My mother looks at me and sees her grief. The other pack members look at me and see their fear." Rena took another step closer. "But you look at me differently. You look at me like you see something else." Do-hyun was quiet for a moment. The cub was smart. Much smarter than he had expected. "What do you think I see?" he asked. "I do not know," Rena said. "That is why I came to find you. My mother told me about humans. She said you were dangerous. She said you fight when you should run away. She said you fix things that other species would throw away." Her golden eyes met his. "Can you fix me?" The question hung in the air between them. Do-hyun thought about the surgery. He thought about the risks. He thought about what would happen if he failed. The alien doctors had said it was impossible. They had the best equipment, the most advanced knowledge, and they had given up. But Rena had not given up. She had pulled herself out of her deathbed and walked through the station to find him. A child, barely old enough to understand what was happening to her, had more courage than all the doctors on this station combined. How could he do any less? "I do not know if I can fix you," Do-hyun said honestly. "The surgery is very dangerous. You could die." "I am already dying," Rena pointed out. "That is true. So you have nothing to lose by trying." Do-hyun almost smiled. "You are very logical for a young cub. My mother says I am stubborn." Rena reached out and touched his hand. Her paw was warm and soft, her claws carefully pulled back. "Please, I do not want to give up. I want to live. I want to see my pack grow. I want to have adventures and see new stars." Her voice broke slightly. "Please help me." Do-hyun looked at her small paw resting on his hand. He thought about all the lives he had saved on Earth, all the patients who had been told they would die but had survived, because someone refused to give up on them. He made his decision. "I will try," he said. "I cannot promise anything, but I will try." Rena's ears perked up. For the first time since he had seen her, she looked like a child again, hopeful, alive. "Thank you," she whispered. Do-hyun gently picked her up and carried her back to the bay. She was lighter than he expected, just fur and bones and determination. As he laid her back on the bed, Caliph woke with a start. "What happened?" the mother demanded, her eyes wild. "Your daughter came to find me," Do-hyun said. "She asked me to help her." Caliph looked at Rena, then at Do-hyun. Her expression was complicated. Fear, hope, suspicion, and something else. "Can you?" she asked quietly. Do-hyun met her gaze. "I do not know, but I will not give up on her. Not while she is still fighting." Caliph was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Then we will trust you, human. Do not make us regret it." Do-hyun knew he could not do the surgery alone. He needed help. He needed equipment. Most importantly, he needed someone he could trust. He found that someone in the engineering section of the station. Yoon. Jia was 29 years old, with short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had come to the station 6 months before Do-hyun, assigned to maintain the life support systems. Like him, she was human. Like him, she was treated as an outsider by the alien crew. They had spoken a few times in the cafeteria, sharing complaints about the food and the cold looks they received from their coworkers. Gia was brilliant. She could fix anything with enough time and spare parts. More importantly, she was not afraid to break the rules. Do-hyun found her in her workshop late at night. She was bent over a broken air filter, her hands covered in grease and her face lit by the glow of her tools. When she saw him at the door, she raised an eyebrow. "You look terrible," she said. "I need your help," Do-hyun replied. He told her everything. The damaged ship, the wounded cub, the alien doctors who had given up, Rena walking through the corridor to find him, the promise he had made. When he finished, Gia leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. "So you want to perform surgery that the best alien doctors say is impossible," she said. "Without permission, without proper equipment, on a child from a species you have only studied in files." She paused. "And you want me to help you build an operating room in secret?" "Yes. If we fail, the cub dies and we get blamed." "Yes. If we succeed, the Union might still punish us for breaking their rules. They could send us back to Earth. They could ban humans from medical work forever." "Yes." Gia was quiet for a long moment. Her eyes were unreadable. Do-hyun waited, his heart pounding. Then Gia smiled. It was a sharp, dangerous smile, the kind that said she had already made up her mind. "Tell me what you need," she said. They worked through the night and into the next day. Gia found an empty cargo hold in a forgotten section of the station. It was dirty and cold, but it was private. No one would look for them there. Do-hyun made a list of equipment. Surgical tools, sterilization units, blood replacement fluids, monitoring machines. Most of it was locked in the medical bay, controlled by Tareem and his staff. But Gia was an engineer. She knew the station better than anyone. She knew which doors had weak locks. She knew which storage rooms were forgotten. She knew how to borrow things without anyone noticing. One by one, they gathered what they needed. A surgical laser from a broken repair kit, medical scanners from an old emergency pod, tubing and fluids from the maintenance supplies. Gia built a surgical table from metal sheets and padding. She rigged up lights from spare parts. She created a sterilization field using technology meant for cleaning engine components. It was not pretty. It was not official. But it would work. While Gia built the operating room, Do-hyun studied. He read everything he could find about Mirathi anatomy. He practiced the surgery in his mind, over and over, imagining every cut, every stitch, every possible problem. He thought about what could go wrong and how he would fix it. He did not sleep. He barely ate. He had made a promise, and he intended to keep it. On the third night, they were ready. Do-hyun went to the Mirathi Bay. Caliph was still there, sitting beside her daughter. Rena was weaker than before. She could barely open her eyes. Time was running out. "We are ready," Do-hyun said quietly. Caliph looked up at him. Her golden eyes were red from crying, but there was steel beneath the tears. "Will she survive?" she asked. "I do not know. The surgery is very dangerous. There is a good chance she will die on the table." Do-hyun paused. "But if we do nothing, she will definitely die. This is her only chance." Caliph was silent. She looked at Rena, stroking her daughter's fur with gentle claws. Then she stood up. "I am coming with you," she said. "I will not let my daughter face this alone." They moved through the station in darkness, avoiding the main corridors. Caliph carried Rena in her arms, wrapped in blankets. The cub was barely conscious, her breathing shallow and fast. Every step felt like it might be her last. When they reached the cargo hold, Gia was waiting. The makeshift operating room glowed with soft light. The surgical table was ready. The equipment hummed quietly. "It is not much," Gia admitted. "But it is the best I could do." Calith looked around the room. Her expression was hard to read. "You built this for my daughter?" she asked. "We both did," Gia said. Calith nodded slowly. "Then I owe you both a debt. Whatever happens tonight, I will not forget this." They placed Rena on the table. Do-hyun attached the monitoring wires and checked her vital signs. Her hearts were weak. Her blood pressure was dropping. The shrapnel had shifted, causing more internal bleeding. She was dying faster than expected. There was no more time for preparation. No more time for doubt. Do-hyun picked up the surgical laser. His hands were steady. His mind was clear. He had done this before, in worse conditions, with fewer tools. He could do it again. "I am starting," he said. Calith stood in the corner, watching. Her claws dug into her palms, drawing blood. But she did not make a sound. Gia monitored the machines, calling out numbers and warnings, and Do-hyun began to cut. The surgery was harder than anything he had ever done. Marathi anatomy was similar to Earth animals in some ways, but different in others. Their blood was thicker. Their organs were arranged differently. The shrapnel was deeper than the scans had shown, tangled in blood vessels and nerves. 1 hour passed. Then 2. Then 3. Rena's heart stopped for the first time at hour 4. Do-hyun shocked it back to life and kept working. It stopped again at hour 6. And again at hour 7. Each time, Do-hyun brought her back. Each time, he kept going. By hour 8, his hands were covered in purple blood. His back ached. His vision was blurring from exhaustion. But he could see the shrapnel now, a tiny piece of twisted metal buried near Rena's secondary heart. "Almost there," he whispered. "Just a little more." At hour 9, he lifted the shrapnel from Rena's chest. It was no bigger than a fingernail. Such a small thing to cause so much pain. "It is out," Do-hyun said. Gia checked the monitors. Her eyes went wide. "Her vitals are stabilizing," she said, her voice shaking. "She is going to live." Calith let out a sound that was half sob, half howl. She rushed to the table and took her daughter's paw. "Rena," she whispered. "My little one. Stay with me." Rena's eyes fluttered open. She looked at her mother, then at Do-hyun. "Did you fix me?" she asked weakly. Do-hyun smiled for the first time in days. "Yes," he said. "I fixed you." The news spread through the station like fire. By morning, everyone knew what had happened. The human medic had performed secret surgery on the Marathi cub. He had used stolen equipment in a hidden cargo hold. He had done what the alien doctors said was impossible. Some people were amazed. Others were angry. A few were afraid. Tareem, the chief medical officer, was all three. He stormed into the cargo hold just after dawn, his translucent skin blazing with furious reds and oranges. Behind him came a group of station security officers, their weapons ready. They surrounded Do-hyun and Gia, blocking all the exits. "What have you done?" Tareem demanded. His voice was cold and sharp. Do-hyun stood his ground. He was exhausted, his clothes stained with blood, his eyes heavy with lack of sleep. But he did not look away. "I saved a life," he said simply. "You broke every rule we have. You performed surgery without permission. You stole medical equipment. You endangered a patient who was under our care." Tareem's colors shifted to a dark, angry purple. "You could have killed her." "She was already dying," Do-hyun replied. "You had given up on her." "I did not. That was not your decision to make. Someone had to make it." The security officers moved closer. One of them grabbed Ja's arm. She did not resist, but her eyes were defiant. "You will both be arrested," Tareem said. "You will face the station tribunal. And when they find you guilty, you will be sent back to your planet in disgrace. Your species will pay for this. Humans will never be trusted again. Da-hyun felt his heart sink. He had known this might happen. He had accepted the risk. But hearing it said out loud made it real in a way it had not been before. Everything he had worked for, everything humans had tried to build in the galaxy, could be destroyed because of him, but he did not regret it. Not for a single moment. "Do what you must," he said quietly. "But I would do it again." Tarim opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, there was a commotion at the door. Keleth pushed through the security officers like they were made of paper. Behind her came the rest of her pack, 15 Marathi with bristling fur and gleaming eyes. They filled the cargo hold with their presence. Tall and fierce and absolutely unafraid Dot in Keleth's arms was Rena. The cub was awake and alert, wrapped in warm blankets. She was still weak, but her eyes were bright, and her fur had regained some of its shine. She looked more alive than she had in days. "What is the meaning of this?" Tarim demanded. Keleth set Rena down gently. The cub stood on her own 4 legs, swaying slightly but standing. She looked at Tarim with her golden eyes, then walked slowly across the room to stand beside Do-hyun. Keleth straightened to her full height. She was taller than Tarim, taller than most of the security officers. When she spoke, her voice rang through the cargo hold like a bell. "This human saved my daughter," she said. "When your doctors gave up, he did not. When your protocol said it was impossible, he found another way. He risked everything, his career, his freedom, his reputation, to save a child he had never met." She turned to face the security officers. They took a step back without thinking. "Among my people, such an act creates a life debt. It is the most sacred bond we have. This human is now pack friend to the Marathi. An attack on him is an attack on us." Tarim's colors flickered with uncertainty. "This is a Union station. Your customs do not override our laws." "Then here are customs alongside your laws," Keleth growled. "If this tribunal punishes these humans for saving my daughter's life, the Marathi will take it as an act of war. Every pack and every system will know what happened here. They will know that the Galactic Union values rules more than lives, procedures more than mercy." She stepped closer to Tarim, her golden eyes burning. "Is that the message you want to send?" The cargo hold was silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Finally, Tarim spoke. His colors had faded to a pale, uncertain gray. "The tribunal will decide," he said. "Not me." "Then we will speak to the tribunal," Keleth replied. "And we will tell them what kind of beings you punish and what kind you protect." The tribunal met that afternoon. It was held in the station's central chamber. A large round room with seats for representatives of all 12 species. Da-hyun and Jia stood in the center, surrounded by alien faces that ranged from curious to hostile. Tarim presented the charges against them in a cold, formal voice. Unauthorized surgery, theft of equipment, violation of medical protocols, endangerment of a patient. When he finished, Keleth stood to speak. She told the story from the beginning. The pirate attack, the wounded cub, the doctors who said nothing could be done, the human who walked past her daughter's room every night, looking at her with something other than pity. The surgery in the cargo hold, performed with makeshift tools and desperate hope. The moment when Rena opened her eyes and asked if she was fixed. When she finished, she called Rena forward. The cub walked to the center of the chamber on her own. She was still weak, still recovering, but she walked with her head held high. She looked at the tribunal members one by one. "I was going to die," she said. Her voice was small but clear. "Everyone said so. The doctors said it. My mother cried when she thought I was sleeping. I could feel my heart's getting weaker every day." She turned to look at Do-hyun, but he did not give up on me. He tried when no one else would try. He fought for me when everyone else had stopped fighting. She paused. If that is a crime, then I do not understand your laws. And I do not think I want to. The chamber was silent. The tribunal deliberated for 3 hours. When they returned, their verdict was simple. All charges were dropped. Do-hyun and Jia were free. Tarim's skin flickered with something that might have been embarrassment or might have been relief. He left the chamber without speaking to anyone. As the crowd dispersed, Khalith approached Do-hyun. Her fierce expression had softened into something warmer. "You have given my daughter back to me," she said. "There is no way I can repay that debt. But I will try, for the rest of my life." Don shook his head. "You do not owe me anything. I just did what any doctor should do." "No," Khalith said firmly. "You did what no one else would do. That is different. That is special." She placed her paw on his shoulder, a gesture of deep respect among the Marathi. "You are packed now, Park Do-hyun. Wherever you go, whatever you need, the Marathi will be there for you." Do-hyun did not know what to say, so he simply nodded. Beside him, Rena tugged at his sleeve. "Does this mean we are family now?" she asked. Do-hyun looked down at the small cub with her silver fur and golden eyes. Despite everything, despite the exhaustion and the fear and the uncertainty, he smiled. "Yes," he said. "I suppose it does." 6 months passed, and the galaxy began to change. Word of the human medic and the Marathi cub spread far and wide. Traders carried the story from station to station. Diplomats whispered about it in meeting halls. News networks across a dozen. Systems reported on the surgery that should have been impossible. At first, many species were skeptical. Humans were supposed to be primitive, aggressive, untrustworthy. How could one of them succeed where the best alien doctors had failed? Surely there was some trick, some deception, some hidden motive. But as more details emerged, the skepticism began to fade. Medical experts studied the recordings of the surgery. They saw Do-hyun's steady hands, his careful cuts, his refusal to give up even when Rena's heart stopped beating. They saw techniques they had never considered, approaches that broke all the rules but somehow worked. It should not have been possible, one Vela surgeon admitted in an interview. By our standards, the patient was beyond saving, but the human did not accept our standards. He created his own. Other species began to take notice. If humans could do this, what else might they be capable of? The Galactic Union reassigned Do-hyun to their Central Medical Academy. His job was to teach human surgical techniques to alien students. It was a position of honor, something no human had ever achieved before. Do-hyun accepted it with quiet pride. Jia received a commendation for her engineering work. She was promoted to chief of maintenance for the entire station sector. The same aliens who had ignored her before now sought her advice on difficult problems. The Marathi pack stayed at Harmony's Rest for 3 more months while Rena recovered fully. The cub grew stronger every day. Her fur regained its bright silver shine. Her golden eyes sparkled with mischief and curiosity. She followed Do-hyun around the station whenever she could, asking endless questions about human medicine, human customs, and human life. "Why do humans have only one heart?" she asked one day. "We just do," Do-hyun replied. "Our bodies work differently than yours. But what if your heart stops? You do not have a second one to keep you alive. Then we have to restart it quickly, or hope someone nearby knows how to help." Rena considered this for a long moment. "That seems very dangerous." "It is. That is why humans learn to take care of each other. We are fragile, so we have to be strong for each other." "I like that," Rena said thoughtfully. "Being strong for each other. I want to do that too." When the day came for the Marathi to leave, Do-hyun went to the docking bay to say goodbye. The whole pack was there, loading supplies onto their newly repaired ship. Khalith stood at the boarding ramp, her silver fur gleaming under the station lights. She approached Do-hyun and held out a wrapped package. "For you," she said. "A gift from the pack." Do-hyun unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a knife, beautifully made with a curved blade and a handle carved from dark wood. Strange symbols were etched into the metal, glowing faintly with an inner light. "It is a pack blade," Caliph explained, "given only to those who have proven themselves worthy. The symbols mark you as a friend to all Marathi, now and forever. Show this to any of our kind, and they will help you without question." Do-hyun held the knife carefully. It was lighter than he expected, perfectly balanced. "Thank you," he said. "I will treasure it." Caliph nodded. Then she did something unexpected. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. A gesture he had learned was the highest form of respect among her people. "You gave me back my daughter," she said softly. "You gave me back my future. I will never forget that, Park Do-hyun, and neither will any Marathi who hears this story." She stepped back, and Rena bounded forward. The cub had grown during her time on the station. She was taller now, her movements more confident. But her eyes were the same, bright and curious and full of life. "I do not want to say goodbye," she admitted. "Then do not say goodbye," Do-hyun suggested. "Say something else instead." "Like what?" "Like, until we meet again." That is what humans say when they know they will see someone in the future. Rena thought about this. Then she nodded firmly. "Until we meet again, Park Do-hyun." She reached up and hugged him, her small arms surprisingly strong. "And when we do meet again, I will have learned many things. I am going to become a healer, like you. I'm going to save lives like you saved mine." Do-hyun hugged her back, feeling a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with temperature. "I know you will," he said. "You are the bravest person I have ever met, Rena. Whatever you decide to do, you will be amazing at it." Rena pulled back, her eyes shining with tears she was too proud to shed. "I will make you proud," she promised. "You already have." The Marathi ship departed an hour later. Do-hyun watched it from the observation deck until it was nothing but a small light among the stars. Gia found him there, staring out at the endless darkness. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Yes," Do-hyun said. "Just thinking." "About what?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he turned to face her. "When I came to this station, I thought my job was to prove that humans belonged in the galaxy. I thought I had to show everyone that we were good enough, smart enough, worthy enough to be part of their union." He shook his head. "I was wrong." "Wrong how?" "I do not need to prove anything. I just need to be myself. To do what I know is right, even when others say it is impossible. To help people, whoever they are, whatever species they belong to." He looked back at the stars. "That is what humans are for. Not conquest, not competition. Just helping and hoping and refusing to give up." Gia stood beside him in comfortable silence. "That is a nice thought," she said eventually. "It is the truth," Do-hyun replied. "And one day, the whole galaxy will understand it." Many years later, historians would write about the turning point in human-galactic relations. They would talk about treaties and trade agreements, about diplomatic victories and military alliances. They would debate which moment was most important, which event changed everything. But those who truly understood knew the real answer was not a treaty or a battle. It was a human medic who refused to accept the impossible. It was a cub who walked through a dark corridor to find him. It was a surgery performed in a cargo hold with stolen equipment and desperate hope. It was the moment when the galaxy learned that humans were not dangerous because they fought well. They were dangerous because they cared too much. They would move mountains for a stranger. They would break every rule to save a child. They would stand against the whole universe if they believed it was right. And in the end, that stubbornness, that compassion, that absolute refusal to give up was the most powerful force the galaxy had ever seen. Rena grew up to become one of the greatest healers the Mirathi had ever known. She saved hundreds of lives, using techniques she learned from humans. She trained other doctors, spread her knowledge across the stars, and never forgot the human who had saved her. And whenever young cubs asked her why she became a healer, she told them the story. The story of a night when she was dying, when everyone had given up, when she walked through a dark corridor and found a human who looked at her differently than everyone else. "He saw something in me," she would say, "something worth fighting for, and because he did, I learned to see it in others too." That was the legacy of Park Do-hyun. Not fame or power or glory, just a cub who lived, and a galaxy that learned what humans were truly made of.